Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the May Lead Speech Language Pathologist meeting. I know you guys are really busy this time of year, and I appreciate you getting on today. And for those of you who weren't able to get on, we'll have everything recorded for you. The first thing we're going to do today is have Sarah Martin talk to us about how to read and interpret the language sample analysis. And she's also going to just walk us through the collection process and how to upload and that kind of thing, just as a reminder for everyone. But this way we'll have it recorded and we can post that for people who haven't done it before. So Sarah, I appreciate you volunteering to do this. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and let you share yours.
Hey guys, this is, I didn't realize I was going to be recorded, which is perfectly fine with probably a little more casual than I would have done if I had really thought about being recorded. So, but let me share my screen with you. Oh, you're good. I'm good with casual all the time, usually. So let's see, share my screen. And so when you do the collection, actually, I don't need to share yet, so let me stop doing that. When you do the collection, it's really pretty simple. So as soon as I get a permission form to do an eval, I will take my permission and I stick it in a handy dandy little folder, and then, which doesn't seem like it matters, but here in a minute I'll tell you why it does. And then I put it away. But the first thing I do before I put it away is I go and collect their language sample so I can send that off. And then when I get it back, I will just put the results in there. And then when I'm ready to test them, they're sitting there waiting. I'm like, am I going to have just a few days to get this done? So it's just the first thing I do. As soon as I get it, I go ahead and record the sample and send it off. And then in order to do that, you need a couple of different things. One of them is the protocol, and these are all online, and I can, if you need it, we can post the, Leanne, I'm sure, has easy access to post them, but where the protocols all are. So there's a conversation protocol, which is very simple. You essentially just ask them, tell me about some of the things you've been doing in school lately, or, hey, did you do anything special for Halloween? Tell me about that. Talking about a family activity or a trip. Did you tell me about your pets? Things like that. And then it just talks about like how much coaching you can give them. And this is for pre-K through 7th grade. And then there's one for the higher grades for conversation. And narratives for pre-K, you use this book called Frog, Where Are You? This book has no, so you have to read the words off of the printed script, which I just keep in my book. And I also keep a little line keeper because it's hard. The pages aren't numbered, so you have to make sure that you kind of follow along. But at this point, I can tell the froggy story in my sleep. And you also can get it read online, like you can let them listen to it, but I don't find that to be as I did do that for a Spanish speaker. I had them listen to it in Spanish and then retell it to me in Spanish, recorded it and sent it to them so that they could analyze it in Spanish because I don't speak Spanish. So that's for pre-K, kindergarten, and first. You can see on there that I wrote the ages on there, so I don't have to try to remember which ages they're for. Then you also have a different book for I believe this is 1st grade. It's Pookins Gets Her. In this one, I don't know if you can see it, but you have to, the words are actually in there. And so again, you print your script. If you leave the words in there, you really do get where the kids try to read it and then it messes it up. So you don't want to have the words left in there. Then they have another book for older kids. I believe that goes through 9-11. And then there is one for everybody else from 4th grade to 6th grade. I don't use this one much, so it doesn't have anything marked up in it. So that's how you collect the language sample. You read the story to them, and then you say, okay, now it's your turn. You read it back to me, and you record it on my iPad, and then email it to myself. And then once I get in the email, let me show you how to upload it. So you will go to, if you don't know how to pin, if you just push this little pin button, it will stick the email so it always stays up at the top, or you could save it somewhere, but I like that it's at the top. Leanne's email saved, and I open the resource library email, and then in here, there's a place for you to upload your file. Actually, it won't let me follow it I think. But you'll click on this button, and then it will let you go and upload your file to the WVU site. And this is where it gets really important. Are you seeing my screen?
Yes.
Okay, good. This is where it gets important to have the folder that you know about. One of the things that I'm finding because I have turned in 40, and like I had 8 out at once and got them back kind of all at once, is that we have kids who have the same initials, and initials is all you get back, and you get an age, and they happen to be the same age. And so then I had trouble figuring out like which one of these is which student. So I am going to be labeling their file name when I upload it, because that's where they get the name from. I think I'm gonna use like the Greek alphabet and then the color of their little divider thing that they went in. So the name on there may be alpha blue, so that I don't end up with kids who are the same and I can't tell who's who. But you'll just need to figure out how you're gonna, who this is, even though you're not allowed to put a name on the report. And then you would click on this to go in, and you just have to fill out like it's Berkeley County. You'd fill out your name and you fill out what you want them to do and what kind of sample you're submitting. So I would just say, I'm submitting so-and-so, their age, and then I would say this is I do FWAY for Froggy, where are you? Or just the first letter, PGHW for Pookins gets her way, so that they know what kind of do a narrative analysis or a conversation. So then generally I'm going to say it has been very unusual for it to be more than 2 weeks before I get something back. Generally it's a week to about 10 days or so to get a transcript back. And then when I get it, this is what you get. So this is a student, and again, there's no personal information in here, so I can share it with you without really being concerned about it. This is the report back, and it's like 15 pages. I usually look at this first page, and then the rest of it I don't look at unless I have questions. So this first part just tells you about the type of task that they did, and you know what task they did. So I don't even necessarily read through a lot of that because I know already. And it tells you that they're using a standard deviation of 1.5. The rest of this highlighting I did just so that you can see what I pick up on when I read it, because I'm trying to do this quickly because I don't have a lot of write reports. So I'm really just looking at, okay, does it say within normal limits? Does it say within normal limits? And it does. So here you can see this is normal, and I guess I should tell you what all these things are, but it tells you in there. You don't have to really understand what it is. So this is the transcript length. How many utterances did you use? That was normal. It even tells you how long it took. And so all of those things were normal for the task. If you had a kid who had like a dysarthria and it was very effortful to speak, it would show up here that their rate was slow. Clearly, you get an intelligibility score, which is really nice. They will tell you how many utterances are intelligible and then also how many words were intelligible and whether or not that was within the normal range. Macro analysis is really about the story retell piece of it. You can see here there's no number and there's not a within normal limits, and that tells me right away he left something out. So I'm going to have to go look at the actual chart in there. And so then in syntax and morphology, this is looking at not so much grammar, but like sentence complexity and how many morphemes they're using. So really at the very top, you're getting MLU, both in words, which you see is below, and then also in morphemes, which again was below. And then it says here that he has 89% of his utterances contain verbs. So wait a minute, like 22% of your utterances or 12% of, I'm sorry, don't even have a verb. We got something going on there. So I see, okay, that's below where it needs to be. And then they give you the Subordination Index, which measures the number of clauses per utterance. So this is telling you, like, are all of their sentences simple? Can they make compound sentences? Can they use subordinators to make, when sentences like, when we went to the store, then we got some candy. And so you can see here, he didn't use, several of his sentences didn't even have one clause in them. So he was below where he needed to be. And then it gives you some specific examples. And it also tells you that most of his utterances contained a certain number of clauses. He generally had one clause, so 20 utterances with one clause. And his most complex utterance had 2 clauses. So he's really using pretty simple sentences right now. And this kid's 8, so not a huge concern, but we definitely want to see him using complex sentences. And then you have a section on semantics. This is the one that I probably feel is least helpful. It does tell you how many different words they use. So they're not just using thing and stuff and words like that over and over and over and over again. But it doesn't really tell me, are they using quality vocabulary? Are they using big rather than enormous? Are they using really simple vocabulary? It just kind of tells you if they have different vocabulary. But it was within normal limits. I do really like this next one. It's verbal facility, which is essentially like how many pauses, how many restarts, how many ums are you sticking in there, and how long are those pauses, and is that normal? And so, he used 75 per minute, which was a normal range. He had one pause lasting 5 seconds. So the total number of pauses and the pause time was within normal limits. And then his average pause was pretty high. And that's just telling me that time of his pause was higher than most pauses in other things. But, it's 1. So I'm really not too terribly concerned about it. And then they're really good to just tell you what it means. A high number of pauses may indicate difficulty with word retrieval and or utterance formulation. So the interpretation piece is right there. And then it tells you how much of his sample was filled with pauses or false starts or repetitions, and it was within normal limits. And then errors, 45% of his utterances had errors, and I'm like, ooh, that's a pretty high number. And yes, it's higher than the database mean. They go through and they analyze for you what those errors are. So I just quickly look at this and I'm like, once. Oh, here's twice that he left that out, and once. I'm noticing all of these are little words. And, so he's kind of dropping out some of those little words. And then I kind of just look through to see what are the errors. And you can see he used come for become. He used coming for be. He's even dropping out some of those little syllables. And then he had some pronoun errors, her for him, or her for she, him for his, him for he. So sounds like he's using objective pronouns where he should be using subjective pronouns. Little for smaller, and then said the name of the character wrong once. So from that, I'm even pulling like, ooh, it kind of sounds like maybe we've got a little bit of a, dropping out of smaller words or unstressed syllables, and that he is using pronouns incorrectly. So that is his narrative sample. And then I also do, as long as I have time, a conversation sample. And this is one thing you kind of have to be careful for. This is the same kid, and I got this back, and it says PICD, which is PICD, I think, I'm not really even sure what that is supposed to mean. I thought it was the title of the other book, but it's not. But it says that he did a retell. It has that same paragraph from the other one, and he didn't. So you just kind of have to, sometimes there are errors in here, and don't be afraid to email them back and say like, hey, can I get this corrected or whatever, and they'll fix it for you. I didn't worry about it because I knew that what was going on here. But I really, if there's no, in the other one, there was a narrative section on macro, and here there's not. So that was what clued me in that this is not the same. And I went back and looked and just made transcript length. It was a different number of words to make sure I hadn't just gotten the same report twice. But if you ask them to fix it, they will. And so this is his conversation, and I like to just compare what can they do in a narrative versus conversation, and do you see different things here? And I just kind of highlight, if it's above or below. His number of utterances was within normal limits, but the number of words was less. His intelligibility was normal. Again, looking at syntax and morphology, and I'm already getting this clue. Previous one, MLU was below, pronouns was an issue, things like that. And here I'm seeing, 3 below, 3 below, 3 below. Even in conversation, he's really struggling with syntactology. Semantics, again, is normal. Verbal facilities, normal. But he's still got a lot of errors in his conversation. So that, is just a really quick overview of how I just pull out the information that I need from the report, and they really do a very nice job of telling you what's there, what the errors were, so that you can look at them and see, okay, what's the pattern here, so I can fix it. And then I got tired of writing it all out in a narrative. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit here so you can see this better. There you go. So I got tired of writing it in a narrative, and so I developed a chart, and at the top of the chart, it has all of the skills, and then I just delete out what they do incorrect or what they are not in normal limits with. And then in the second one, it's just their weaknesses, and I just put in their weakness and how it was in the narrative and how it was in the conversation, so you can kind of compare. And then there were just a couple of things that I noticed. I'll show you the narrative scheme table in just a second. Just a couple of the things that I noted. Number one, he omitted the conclusion, but his rating overall was in the average range. It was the same as the mean. And then during his narrative task, 22% of his utterances didn't contain a verb. That needs math, not my strong suit. That's why I'm a speech therapist. And then he inconsistently omits to be verbs, articles, and uses objective pronouns in subject position. So just kind of did a little summary of some of the errors there. So this is what it would look like when I report it in a report that I give to the parent. And I tried to, I do turn around this where it says errors. I try to say correct sentences. So I'm kind of saying it in positive language there, since the other ones were said that way. So let me go back to here for a second and show you in the narrative one. So you also, in addition to that nice report at the front, get all of these tables. And I'm just going to scroll very quickly down this. And what I want you to pick up on is just how many boxes are shaded, and then like what the areas they're shaded in. The shaded boxes are areas where they fall more than 1.5 deviations below the mean. So without even looking at what they are, I can look and just see like most of these are within normal limits. And like I said, I'm just going to scroll kind of quickly, and you can see even without stopping to look, I'll explain that one in just a minute, that a lot of these things are within normal limits. So he's got lots of good, strong skills. And then this is actually the entire thing transcript at the end. So you'll see everything he said. So, but if you're just looking at the tables, you can pretty quickly see like he's got a lot of good, strong skills. And then if we stop and slow down just a bit, you can see his average pause time was an issue. So now I'm just looking at titles, he had some difficulty with negating words. He had some difficulty with question words, with prepositions. Those all kind of sound like syntax errors to me. Looking here, this is his subordination index, and it just tells you how many were in sentence level. So you can see he's using all simple sentences, and then most of them just had one clause in them. that top report is just a summary of all of these tables that you're getting. So you can look at it either way, whichever one is easier for you. I'll stop on this one. This is the narrative scoring scheme, and it looks at each of the different parts of the narrative, and then it scores it. There's a rubric that you can print out online, but it scores it based on how much information they include about each of these areas: the introduction, character development, mental state. So this is addressing how they feel, or, oh, I have an idea, trying to show what's going on inside as opposed to just what's going on in the picture itself. Referencing, this is the ability for them to use names and such frequently enough that you can tell who is who and who's doing the action. If they get their pronouns mixed up or they don't use names enough for you to follow along with who's doing what, then they will then they'll have trouble referencing piece. Conflict resolution, do they actually resolve all the problems? Cohesion, this is really like, are they telling a story versus just telling me a sequence of events? Are they just saying, you know, he fell out the window, he broke the jar, he did this, he did that? Or are they saying, first he fell out the window, and then when he hit the ground, the jar smashed? Is it really a story? And then the last one is the conclusion. And anytime that they don't put one in there, like if they missed introduction, it will not give you that score in the report for some reason. You come here, you can just add up the points yourself, and I can see, oh, he was well right there within that mean. So I'm not concerned about his narrative skills, even though he really left out the conclusion. We might just address, like, when you're telling a story, you got to make sure you tell the end of it. But that's not something I'm going to spend a lot of time on. Clearly, no weaknesses here. And this is the, like, word-based, the number of words, the MLU. Oh, it does show that it's a weakness. Oh, this is just a little chart on MLU. Clearly, I don't use these as much as I use. And then here is where you actually see what the MLU was and how far below the means it was. So you can see errors, everything's in syntax and morphology. This kid really has a specific weakness in syntax and morphology, and I can tell you that definitely comes across when I work with them. So that is, I think that was everything I told you I was going to do, how to put it in a chart, all that kind of stuff. So I'll be glad to answer any questions. I don't know that I to them, but if you have questions, let me know. You can put them in the chat, or you can unmute and ask. Okay. Well, then I'm going to give it back to Leanne and let her go on with the rest of it.
Sarah, thank you so much. You did make it simple. It was so much simpler to understand and see what the report shows. Because honestly, since I don't have to give them, I hadn't looked at it for a little while. And we've been doing a project at the school for the deaf and blind, and have had to be reading the reports, and so it does provide a lot of information, but this was extremely helpful. So thank you, Sarah. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now, and we'll move ahead. I knew that we were going to have a lot to do today, and so I only am going to be talking about parts of Policy 2419 because we have, a lot of things to discuss, but I am going to, I think, offer another hour next Friday, and you guys can help me decide if there's a good time. I will record it. If people can't get on, that's absolutely fine. I understand, but I wanted you to have, some more information before the policy goes off comment. We just finished up the public hearings for the comments on Wednesday night in Parkersburg. And so we had 3 public meetings, and honestly, there was only one SLP who came, and that was great. But I want to make sure that everybody knows you have the opportunity to review it and to make comments, and this is your time, because I think they've adjusted our policies now so that they're on a certain cycle for revision and updates. And I think policy 2419 is on a 5-year cycle. So, this next week, it will go off comment on May 16th at 4 o'clock. And after that, we can't really make any changes to it unless there are some maybe typos or that kind of thing. But we will be responsible for going through any comments that you made and either accepting them or rejecting them and then explaining why they were rejected. So it's very important, especially for you guys, to take the opportunity to look at it and make sure that, it looks all right with you, looks all right to you. And this is the hyperlink to get to the page in case you don't have it in your notes. Or emails that I've sent out. I just wanted to go over this a little bit because this is kind of telling how we're going to be looking at language. And really all the placements we're doing, we're not just going to be looking at speech and language tests. We're going to be looking at speech language probes. We're going to be looking at contextualized tests, contextualized that reflect communication abilities, and then academic activities. So we have talked since 2017, I think, about educational relevance, about comprehensive language evaluations, and the importance of doing those and identifying those students who need our support. We've talked about the fact that the tests that we typically use for evaluating language maybe don't have the best sensitivity and specificity to identify those students who actually do have a disorder. And they don't do a good job, too, of identifying those students who don't. So that's one of the reasons that we are using the comprehensive language evaluations to ensure that we consider all aspects of the student's language and communication skills when we make the determination. So with language, I think language is the one that probably had the most changes in it because we really kind of updated every piece of that one. And I want to just go through this very, very quickly. And maybe not quickly, but I want to go through it and discuss these pieces. And a comment that we did receive, I want to show you that and see if that makes more sense to you. And then, we'll look at the rest of the pieces and make sure everybody understands what we're going to be doing when we do language eligibility. The first sentence remained the same for language as it did for speech sound disorders. The first one is 2 or more procedures, at least one of which yields a standard score, are used to assess both expressive and receptive modalities. Now, I had a couple of questions during the hearings this week, and it kind of threw me for a second. But then, after I had time to think it through, the question I was asked is, does this first sentence mean, do you have to do 2 procedures for expressive and 2 procedures for receptive? And I'd be interested to see how you interpret that sentence. So in the chat box, if you could put, do you think this first statement means you need to do 4 procedures, or does it mean you need to do 2? And Libby, if you could help me, that would be great.
I'm looking. So far, I see 2.
Okay.
2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2.
Okay. Well, that's the way I've always interpreted it too. But I think the confusing word might have been procedures. I tried to leave as much as possible on the eligibility criteria as I could. And that's the reason that remained procedures. But I want to talk about this and make sure that it's understandable to everybody.
Rhea said 2, but I can see how someone would read it to be 4.
Yeah, I can too. Once it was brought to my attention, that's what kind of threw me. And I kept thinking, my gosh, how do we rewrite this to make it make more sense? But, you know, what if you think about the fact that what we've done is take what we were already doing and try to make it more comprehensive. So, for instance, for, at least one procedure that yields a standard score, you could use, you know, 3 tests in total, because what you're going to have to do is in 2A, it says language abilities on a norm reference test, and that's the same thing as a standardized test. Assessing receptive and expressive language with all psychomotor properties of diagnostic accuracy. And we specifically said that out, like sensitivity and specificity, positive predictive power, negative predictive power, above 80%. And so that's
Leanne, some people are saying they're having trouble hearing you.
okay. It's kind of raining here, and I'm not sure what to do about. I'm at home. Usually I don't have any trouble, but I took the day off today, so I'm really not sure. Can you hear me if I lean forward? Is that any better?
Sounds a little better to me.
Okay. Okay, I'll try to lean forward. Where was I? Sorry about that. So basically what 2A is saying is we want a test that has good specificity and sensitivity in identifying those students who actually have a language disorder. And one of the reasons we're trying to use this is because of the research that has shown that these tests were never designed to identify students with a disability, and they are identifying students with disorders, but we're using it to determine disabilities. And that's all the more reason why we can't just rely on one test or one examination. We have to rely on more and have it more comprehensive. So with this one, we have to make sure that at least one of our tests has the good sensitivity and specificity. And we're going to use the test's individual cut scores. That's the reason we took away the 78, because saying an arbitrary 78 did not mean that that was the cut score for identifying a disorder on every test that we administer. So that, I think, can be a little wordy the more I've looked at it and lived with it and tried to explain it to people. So that this was the suggestion that was given to us when we had some external stakeholders look at the document before we sent it out on public comment. And this was the suggestion for 2A. At least one norm referenced composite test score that aligns with scores of students who have language disorders based on the test manual's recommended cut score. The test must assess receptive and expressive language and have diagnostic accuracy of 80% or higher. Of the 2 definitions, can you tell me which one you think sounds more clear and you think your therapist would understand more? Either 1, which is the one that has all of the specific details about positive predictive power, that kind of thing, or number 2. And you can just put it in the chat box. And if you're not sure, you don't have to vote.
Or give another idea. So far,
Yeah.
people are saying number 2.
Number 2. Okay. Well, what
Rhea wants to know, are you planning to have a list of tests that have these criteria cut scores?
Yes, ma'am. There's what we did was apply for copyright permission to use a lot of Virginia's assessment forms and that kind of thing that they use, and they have copywritten, and we received that permission Wednesday. But what we're also doing is we're having Dr. Brandel create a card for us that has the tests that we use in West Virginia, because some of the information that was on the test cards from Virginia, it's not tests that we typically use. So Dr. Brandel is making one, and it will have all the cut scores for each test it will have their specificity and sensitivity, and we'll be able to tell right from that, so you don't have to calculate it. I know she taught us how to calculate it, but you know, nobody has time for that. So you'll have the test card to be able to use. So if you think that this this change for 2A is more specific and easier to understand and would make things more clear, I would just ask that you would go in and make a comment on the policy for that section, and just put, you know, what you think it should be. This suggestion is going to be in the PowerPoint, of course, and it'll be on the recording. But I can't go in and change anything now. You know, once it's sent out for public comment, then my hands are tied as far as changing anything. So if several of you could do that and you think that's what would be more helpful, then please do. And that way it'll be sent to me and I can, you know, then go in and make that change.
Leanne, Rhea wants to know, so 2A, is it in addition to the 2 procedures required in number 1?
Yes. Yes, it is. Because you can do 2 composite tests if you want, but what you're going to do too is if you do this composite test, your other 2 procedures might be something like a PPVT or a tackle or something like that, that really looks at specific aspects of language that you noted as being weak during the composite testing. So, you know, we cannot make an eligibility based on just one test anyway. We can't do that. You have to at least have 2 or more. For us to have this comprehensive evaluation, you're going to have one that is at least 80% diagnostic accuracy, and then 2 other procedures. Now, I was asked if the there's the Virginia test card. But like I said, we're going to have one made for West Virginia that has like the cut scores and all that for you.
Leanne, you have 2 more comments from Rhea. So we are now at 3 procedures and 2 formalized assessments. Is that correct?
Now, you're at, and that's the reason if we need to change the word procedure for the 1, that's fine. I mean, for number 1. 2A is 1 assessment, 1 test that is a composite test. It's going to have composite scores for you. The other 2 procedures can be, and one of them has to have a standard, you know, have a standard score. So it could be, like I said, a MAVA, a PPVT, a tackle. It could be any of those that's going to help you pinpoint areas that are weak. If you don't agree with that, you're welcome to put that in the comment section, and we're welcome to discuss it now. But maybe we could go ahead and go through these other 3 and then open it up for discussion, if that's okay.
Sarah added a comment. When you say a composite test, you are looking at comprehensive evaluation such as self, told, CASEL, etc.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, so the eligibility criteria says you have to have 3 of these. One is that test, that composite test. If you have someone that you can't test with that composite test, you can use these other 3. You don't have to have them all. You just have to have 3 of these. Analysis of language discourse, which is the the narrative language sample analysis that Sarah just showed us, of 1.5 standard deviations. A dynamic assessment that demonstrates limited or very limited improvement, or developmental scales or criterion-based assessments, that kind of thing. One of your other procedures could be a written language sample analysis. It could be something like that. It has the same 2 procedures listed on the speech sound disorders. But with that one, I typically counted my second procedure as the oral periph. You know, I would give like a Goldman-Fristo or something that gives you the standard score, but then use the oral perif as a procedure. I think that's the reason the word procedure was used to begin with. But if that's confusing based on the changes we're making, please make those comments and please give me suggestions on what would be better for that. So, and then the rest of the criteria that you have to meet for eligibility would be that the student has a negative impact on academic achievement and that they have be placed for language. You would have to have
Liam, we're not hearing you.
Can you guys hear me now? It sounded like I got bleeped off for a second.
Yeah, we can hear you now. Now your PowerPoint is not up.
Yeah, I just had to get to where I could see if I could see you all.
So while you're getting up, Sarah wanted to know how many areas have to fall 1.5 standard deviations below in the language sample. And Rhea says she thinks procedure is confusing. The word procedure is confusing. And she also thinks that dynamic assessment will need to be better described.
Okay. Rhea, if you could please put all of your comments, not just those, but all of them in the comment section online, I would really appreciate it because I can't address any of that until we do. If procedure is too vague, then can you give me a suggestion about what words we should use there?
You have two people typing.
Okay.
Hey, Leanne, this is Sarah. So I'm just trying to wrap my head around like what an appropriate word there, because I'm still trying to figure out exactly what you guys are wanting. So here's what I think I understand now. So there needs to be like a comprehensive language test, something like that.
Right.
And that would be one of those procedures, correct?
That would be 2A. That would be 2A.
That would be 2A.
If it has the 80% specificity. If it doesn't, then you can still use it, but that would be one of the procedures. You have to have at least one test that has that 80% specificity in identifying.
Sure. And if it does, then it would count as one of those two procedures at the top.
It would count for two.
In one.
You could use in one. If you do that, if you do that, then you just wouldn't have to do 2A. You would use all the other pieces to make the placement. So instead of doing another test, if that's the way you want to go, then you would just use the language sample analysis, dynamic assessment, and developmental scales or criterion based assessments.
Right, but I could use, say if I did a self, that would count, mark me off for 2A, and it would check me off for one of the two procedures for item 1. And then I would also, no, it doesn't.
No.
So in what way is a self not a procedure?
It is a procedure, but what I'm saying is you can't just use one test. You can't just use one test to do it. And a lot of times, what we did in the past was use two. We would give a composite test, and then we would give a, an expressive or receptive test, and that's all we did. So, we were identifying kids who we didn't have a clear picture with language disabilities, who maybe didn't have them, and we were also missing kids who had one, but we were using tests that were so in specific or not specific, that they identify them, didn't identify them when they should have. So I think the procedure is the word that's kind of hanging everybody up here. But it's really funny because that's what we've used all along. Huh?
And I'm looking at like what other people are recommending, which like diagnostic tool. Well, to me, like a self is completely a diagnostic tool. So what would you put there that would then exclude those types of tests, but still be identifiable as what you're looking for?
I'm not sure I understand that one. I'm sorry. I think.
Well, I'm not exclude those items that are included in 2, A, B, C, and D from number 1, from the procedures. And so I'm just still not really clear on what it is that's making 1 separate from 2, A through D.
Well, then we need to figure that out, because if we just eliminated 1 and did the other 4 and just said you need 3 of the 4, then you have the possibility of just using one test to make that determination. And IDEA says you can't base it on one test. Now, even though you've got the dynamic assessment and the developmental scales, we don't want to make that recommendation just based on one standardized assessment or norm reference test. So that's where the other 2 procedures would come in. So if somebody else has an opinion or a question or a suggestion, if you could help us straighten this out, that would be appreciated.
Hey, Leanne, it's Stephanie.
Uh-huh.
Maybe on Sarah's path. So I had took it as we needed 2 of either A, B, C, or D. No. And so we could use the self as one of those, and then we could pick to do a language assessment with the self.
You took it that you were supposed to do. Tell me again what you just said. Because
so,
I was thinking about this for months, and I'm sorry.
That's okay. Can you put it back up on the screen where you have that listed?
Sure. Share my screen. Am I not sharing it now?
But it's just talking about BC. Can you put like the number 1 back where it's talking about the
yeah,
or the A maybe back? Okay, so when it says 2 or more procedures that yield a standard, oh, that's okay.
Okay.
So I think I took it as 2 or more procedures that yield a standard score. So in my opinion, kind of like Sarah mentioned, maybe one of those would be, and then we could use, so we needed one of the following. So then we could use, so that would be reference test. That would be A. And then we could pick either B, C, or D to make the other procedure.
Yeah. You're supposed to be
Is that not
3 from A, B, C, or D. So it was supposed to be all of the following, that 2 procedures, then language is going to be the second one. Number 2 is 3 of those potential ones. So,
and that's what I'm wanting to make sure people understand and make a comment on too. We're doing a self, and we used to do just a self and an observation and put a kid in as speech disordered. That was no longer going to be allowed under this anyways.
Right.
And so then we thought we were adding, okay, so now I have to do a self and a language sample. And I think that's what, and guys, help me out if that's not what you thought was going on. Disagree with me, I'm okay with it. But I think that's kind of where we thought we were headed. Okay, now we have to do a self and a language sample, or a told and a language sample. And then, but then when Leanne, and I don't mind saying, like, I'm the person who went and asked a bunch of questions. Sorry, Leanne. I opened a hornet's nest.
No, this is good.
Oh yeah, it is. But I was just confused because, like I think she was Stephanie, I thought that I was great doing a self and a language sample as my 2 procedures. I've met 2. Okay, I need to add a dynamic assessment or a something else. but I thought I had met that 2 procedures. And when Leanne said no, I was like, what? I'm confused now. So I think a lot of us are in that boat where we thought it was just going to be like a comprehensive, like a self or something like that, and then a language sample. So can you guys give us feedback and really give Leanne feedback and put it in the comment section on 2419? But here, is that what you're thinking? Are you kind of thinking the same as I was, or do you understand it to be different from that?
If you look, though, I'm just going to say one clarification, and then I'll definitely listen. If you look at the definition of a comprehensive language sample, you can't say that it's comprehensive if you have one standardized test from one language sample. So I'm not really sure how you ever got that idea that you would just do one comprehensive test in a language sample. But if I conveyed that, that is definitely not what I meant to. So now you guys chime in, please.
Leanne, where's the definition you're talking about?
The definition of what?
Comprehensive language evaluation.
It's in the SLP guidance document. It's been there since
Okay,
2015.
I'll check it out. Thanks.
Yeah, and I don't know the page right off the bat, but it's toward the back. It's toward the back.
Okay.
And yeah, it lists a bunch of things, and we don't have to have all of them. We don't have to have all of them by any means, but, and I'm not arguing, I'm just trying to figure out what makes sense and what you guys think. If I didn't care about what you guys said and didn't value your opinions, I wouldn't be asking about this today. But I do, and I want it to be so that it's functional too. So please, I mean, don't be afraid to say things, and we can like I said, it's up for change. It's not set in stone. I wouldn't do that. So please give us some input.
Hey, Leanne, so for number 2, did it used to say 2 of the 4? Like when we were back talking at like the stakeholder group, I think maybe that's where I was confused, because I used to be 2 when we, like I said, talking about it, and maybe I didn't pay attention that it had switched to 3. And so that maybe that's where, and Sarah, maybe that's the same where you were, we were just thinking you picked 2 of those A, B, C, or D.
Okay, we did have it as 2. And right before out on comment, I upped it to 3. And the reason I did, and we can always take it back to 2. But honestly, the reason I did is because we were going to use this, like language sample assessment summary from Virginia. And so you have to have different pieces to have the comprehensive language assessment. And, you know, the one column here is for norm reference tests and that kind of thing. And this is for the language samples, the interviews, and dynamic assessment. This is for any academic achievement tests that you would look at, like DIBELS or anything like that. And then academic activities would be like written language samples, observations, that kind of thing. So, you know, just trying to make sure that we had enough information to be able to determine by plugging that information into the form whether or not a student had a language disability. So if we changed it back to 2 and just said you had to have, I still don't think that addresses that 2 procedure piece, or would it? What do you guys feel about that?
Right now,
can you say? Yeah.
Go ahead. Rhea just had mentioned that she was. So, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Leslie. I'll wait.
Well, I'm very sorry, but my ADD is taking over today. When I read Rhea's comment about the amount of time that it seems like we're going to need to put in to our schedules in order to meet this type of criteria, and making sure that we're doing a thorough assessment on all of our students that we have the language concerns with. I do feel like that might be a little overwhelming to look at first. and I want to follow that up with, because I'd asked this question before and I'm not sure if it got answered or if I didn't pay enough attention when it was being answered. Our county has now moved to basically a 45-day timeline. I can send an initial evaluation over and they can tell me, or permission for initial evaluation, and I am getting a work order that says it must be, that it is due within 45 days of the parent signing that evaluation. And I'm only bringing this up because when I read these things for where we need to put additional time in our schedules to make sure we're hitting all is in doing a thorough evaluation, I start to get a little anxious thinking that now instead of 80 days, I'm now being crunched down to 45 with these additional things being added. So
I understand your concern, and I see Ria's comment too. The thing of it is when we did this, now I did make the decision to change the procedures. I mean, not the procedures, but that you needed to do 3 of A through D instead of 2. I'm happy to change that back. But the thing of it is I not only sent this out to 5 therapists who, lead therapists who offered to help, but I also sent it out to the universities. I sent it, we researched guidance documents all around the country to write these. So I am perfectly happy to make them more clear and to reduce the number from 3 to 2. That's fine with me. But I think we need to remember that what we're trying to do is get the comprehensive evaluation. And we've been talking, I know it's hard to adjust sometimes, but we've been talking about 3 to 1, saying you're going to need time to do these evaluations, trying to prepare everybody for the fact that this was coming. This is what they're doing all over the country. So what I want to do is have us all figure out together the best way to make it so that it's not so scary. The fact that one county, I'm sure I can figure out why they've done that, why you decided the 45-day timeline. But honestly, IDEA has a 60-day timeline. So for them to be even more reduced than that, I really can't, change all of our guidelines because of that. What I can say is that if you're using 3 to 1, it's going to give you more time. We've tried to set up the language sample analysis at WVU, so you guys don't have to take your time to do that. And like I said, like I told Sarah the other night, I'm not a dictator. I'm really not. That's the reason I wanted to spend some time with you guys on this today. I don't think we're going to get it finished by any means. But now you guys have seen this and have looked at it a little bit more closely. I would definitely want you to put your comments and, put those comments on the online comment section, because, that's going to allow us to open this up and make the changes. What I'd like to propose, I had said next Friday, but next Friday might be too late as far as trying to get it just, before the comments go off. So the comments will go off that Monday, I think, at 4 o'clock. So if there's any way, I'm going to reach out to the 5 people who helped me before. If there's any way we could, find some time to look at this again more carefully this time, maybe, and see if we can get this narrowed down so that it's more appropriate. I know this is a horrible time of year to do this, but I want to at least try to be as flexible and, take your comments as seriously as I can, because it's, it's important. And so maybe if we can meet, then we can send out the proposed changes and then have another meeting maybe next Friday and record that. If you can't attend, I certainly understand, but I feel like this is important enough to do it. I haven't done it before because we were doing the hearings and I couldn't release any of it until it was out on comment. So Is that agreeable with you guys? For us to know that we're not finished with this discussion, and we're going to try to see if we can straighten it out a little bit. Rhea, I'd like to add you to the discussion if you don't mind, and we will go from there. Is that okay with everybody? Okay, I see some yeses, and yeah, that's great. I mean, like I said, I am not going to, try to do something to you guys that's not appropriate or that's not, in the student's best interest for sure. And I do value your comments. So thank you for speaking up today. And Sarah, thank you so much for coming the other night and bringing this up, because honestly, because that had been there, for years and years, I never even thought about that being an issue, and nobody else had commented on it. So thank you so much for bringing that up. And I told you that we're going to see what everybody else said, and we sure did today. So thanks. And I appreciate your honesty, and we're not finished yet. So like I said, I will reach out Monday probably to the people. I took off today because I have, some important things I need to do here at home, but I will try to get that email out, I guess, to the 5 people who helped, and see if we can find a time next week to do it. So, and then we'll be back. Probably we have service delivery in preschool next week. So maybe, I've got a meeting until 10:30, maybe like 11 o'clock on Friday, and we'll record it. But I'll send you the information ahead of time, so you'll still have time to make comments. Okay, I'm sorry we didn't get to the rest of our information.